I felt this so many times, sitting with the rosary in my hands, the beads slipping between my fingers, and realizing that my mind insists on wandering, while my heart just wants to rest in God's presence. It's a delicate moment, almost imperceptible, yet full of meaning. A moment when everything seems still, but inside, something is moving subtly, deeply, silently. Sometimes I wonder if those minutes when my eyes close during prayer are a waste of time. Then I remember Saint Faustina. She wrote in her diary about visions, graces, and insights she received precisely when her body surrendered to sleep, even with the pure intention to pray. She shows us that what happens within us doesn't depend solely on our waking consciousness. The Spirit has rhythms we often ignore, and grace can flow even when we think we are idle. It's as if the spiritual universe works through quiet breaths, through the silent beat of the heart. I've noticed that even while we sleep, something inside us continues to process intentions, desires, and prayers. It's an invisible process, not measured by effort or mindful attention. Jesus taught us, quietly, that true faith does not show off or hurry. It grows, sometimes without our noticing, like a seed planted in fertile soil that sprouts overnight, out of sight of the world. Sleeping during prayer is not failure. It means a part of us is allowing that seed to bloom without interference. I realize many of us carry a quiet guilt, feeling that if we close our eyes, we are betraying the prayer. I've felt that myself, and I know it's not uncommon. But Saint Faustina teaches us something fundamental. Surrender, even unconscious, is still surrender. The intention to seek God's presence, to open the heart through the rosary, is more powerful than the alert mind that judges, analyzes, and compares. There's an invisible current running when we sleep. It connects us to the divine in ways we cannot measure but can feel. That's why I want to share how to understand the deeper meaning of falling asleep while praying the rosary. But it requires a real commitment. Write in the comments, "My prayer follows me." Doing this takes less than 10 seconds, yet it anchors this idea in your mind, because speaking and affirming intentions strengthens clarity and inner determination. Now we can better recognize that even in moments of fatigue or drowsiness, your prayer is not lost. It transforms into subtle energy, opening invisible pathways and allowing grace to act quietly in your life and heart. What seems like wasted time is often just the way the divine chooses to touch us deeply and invisibly. The mind wants control, but the spirit moves freely. And it's in that space between attention and rest that real transformation occurs. Imagine each rosary bead slipping through your fingers as a thread of light connecting your soul to divine mercy. It's not the presence of a waking body that matters. It's the presence of an open heart. When I close my eyes during prayer, I learn to feel prayer as something alive, breathing within me. A subtle, almost imperceptible movement that transforms anxiety into stillness, worry into quiet trust. And it's precisely this quiet that allows the rosary to become a channel for something greater than ourselves, something Saint Faustina described so clearly, that God's mercy works even when we merely allow it, even when we think we are doing nothing. The challenge, then, is not to fight sleep or distraction, but to notice what unfolds behind these silent moments. Every instant the mind quiets, even as the body drifts, is an instant of deep reconnection. It's as if the river of grace within us never stops. It simply flows through invisible channels that only the heart can recognize. And in that recognition, we begin to feel a peace that doesn't rely on control, effort, or constant vigilance, but on conscious, quiet surrender. There are times when we believe the intensity of prayer depends on our full attention, as if every waking second validates our connection with God. I've felt this countless times, the rosary beads slipping through my fingers, my thoughts scattering in 1,000 directions, and that tight sense of guilt pressing on my chest. It's a silent pressure that makes us believe that falling asleep or losing focus during prayer is failure, as if faith must be tested every moment. Saint Faustina shows us a different path. She understood that surrender of the heart, even when the body gives in, carries more weight than an alert mind that judges and worries. There's wisdom in letting pure intention flow without conscious interference. Faith is not measured by effort or awake time. It's a subtle, invisible thread connecting our soul to divine mercy. Sleeping while praying is not weakness. It is the Spirit opening without barriers, allowing grace to work without interference from anxiety or the critical mind. It's curious how the body and mind operate on rhythms different from the spirit. Physical tiredness may close the eyes, but the soul remains active, processing intentions, absorbing light, receiving answers often only recognized later. As Faustina described in her diary, an inner life continues even when the body seems still. It's in that silent zone, between wakefulness and rest, that prayer can reach depths often unattainable through full conscious attention. Many people don't realize that the pressure to stay fully aware during prayer creates resistance. We try to control God's presence, measure our spiritual performance, and end up blocking the very flow of grace. Unconscious surrender, on the other hand, opens invisible doors. Sleep doesn't interrupt, it reorganizes, transforming anxiety into receptivity, worry into quiet trust. Every moment of fatigue or distraction is, in fact, an opportunity for prayer to manifest in ways we haven't yet begun to understand. When I reflect on this, I see that our fear of not being enough in prayer is really just a reflection of our need to control. Saint Faustina teaches us that true faith doesn't need to be visible, it doesn't need to be measured. It's like a flame burning quietly, even when the wind tries to blow it out. Our conscious effort is just the surface. Beneath it, the Spirit works, connects, and transforms. When we accept this truth, something shifts. We begin to realize that resting during prayer doesn't take us away from God's presence. It draws us closer, because an open heart continues to vibrate at the same frequency as God's mercy. Surrender, even unconscious, is deeper than constant vigilance. It is in this awareness that silent peace arises, a peace that doesn't depend on effort or external validation. The body may fall asleep, the mind may wander, but the soul keeps moving. And it is in this invisible movement that prayer finds its truest strength. Each rosary bead, even traced with closed eyes, is a thread of light connecting the heart to the divine. Full awareness is helpful, but not essential. What matters most is the intention that remains, even when we cannot perceive what is happening inside. Many times, we don't notice, but there is an invisible current quietly sabotaging the power of our prayers. I've felt it countless times, the sense of praying, moving the rosary beads, while a subtle anxiety runs underneath, diverting the energy that should flow freely. It's a delicate weight, almost imperceptible, yet strong enough to drain the connection with the divine without us realizing. Saint Faustina shows that prayer doesn't rely solely on conscious attention. She experienced moments when, even distracted or tired, she received visions, consolation, and answers in unexpected ways. It's as if grace operates on another level, through channels we cannot measure, a silent flow that continues even when body and mind appear shut down. God's presence isn't measured by effort, it manifests in pure intention, in surrender that doesn't need constant vigilance. A restless mind, worry that won't sleep, the need to control every thought during prayer, all of this quietly interferes with the energy we are trying to channel. The soul's vibration is not just emotional, it's energetic. When we cling to judgment, guilt, or fear, we create invisible barriers that block the flow of grace. Recognizing this is a profound first step because it allows us to observe without blame, without forcing concentration that anxiety already undermines. Sleep during the Rosary makes this dynamic clear. It shows us that when we let the body rest, the soul does not disperse. It finds a free space to reconnect with the divine frequency. What seemed like distraction or failure is, in fact, reorganization. It's the Spirit clearing channels, adjusting energy, creating conditions for prayer to manifest more deeply and effectively, free from the interference of the critical mind. Noticing the silent factor that sabotages prayer's energy also teaches patience and compassion with ourselves. It's not about overexertion or constant vigilance. It's about observing, welcoming, noticing internal blockages without fear, and allowing grace to find its way. Every moment of fatigue, every wandering thought, is not a definitive obstacle. It's an invitation for the soul to work on another level, where God's presence acts even without our conscious control. Saint Faustina understood deeply that grace does not wait for the perfection of body or mind. It moves silently, through invisible channels, often manifesting answers when we least expect them. Sleeping while praying the Rosary is not failure. It is tuning into this silent flow, honoring the harmony between body, mind, and spirit. It is in this respect that prayer finds its truest strength. When we understand this dynamic, everything changes. We begin to see that what seemed like sabotage is actually part of a natural process of alignment. Anxiety and conscious effort give way to quiet surrender, to the recognition that the energy of prayer continues even when the body rests. And in that rest, in what we might judge as passivity, the soul works with divine grace in ways that can only be felt, not measured. Sleep becomes a portal for spiritual manifestation. There are moments when the body yields and the spirit awakens in ways we cannot comprehend. I've noticed this so many times, closing my eyes during prayer and, upon waking, sensing that something has shifted within me, that answers have emerged, that decisions have clarified in unexpected ways. It is like passing through an invisible portal, where prayer continues to manifest even when we are not consciously aware. Saint Faustina showed us that the soul can receive visions, insights, and graces during states of rest or semi-wakefulness. She described in detail how God's mercy revealed itself when the mind quieted, allowing the spirit to absorb what reason could not grasp. It's a profound reminder that prayer is not limited to conscious effort. It expands into subtle levels where the divine works silently. Sleep during the Rosary creates an unusual state of receptivity. When we are semi-awake, the mind relaxes and stops interfering, but the heart remains open. In that interval, spiritual energy flows with less resistance, and the intention behind our words finds invisible paths to manifest. What seemed like mere rest is, in truth, a silent transformation. Recognizing this changes our relationship with prayer. We no longer need to judge ourselves for moments of fatigue or distraction. Every instant of sleep or slight wandering is a channel through which grace slips in, reorganizing energy, adjusting thoughts and feelings, and creating conditions for answers and insights to emerge naturally. It is in this quiet space that spiritual manifestation occurs most deeply and enduringly. Sleep then becomes a bridge between conscious effort and divine action. Just as Faustina received revelations while resting, we too can perceive that prayer remains alive, even when we feel we are doing nothing. In this paradox lies the depth of faith, in silent surrender, allowing the invisible to work without interference from the anxious mind. Understanding that rest does not interrupt prayer, but expands its reach teaches us to value every moment of devotion. Every rosary bead slipping through the fingers during sleep carries an opportunity for deep connection, silent transformation, and alignment with divine mercy. The body may sleep, but the soul stays awake, working with energy beyond what we can perceive. Once we accept that sleep is part of the spiritual process, every moment of prayer becomes lighter and more effective. The mind stops struggling, anxiety eases, and the soul's frequency aligns with what God is already doing within us. Sleeping while praying is not an obstacle, it is a portal. A silent passage where prayer manifests in ways only the heart can feel, not the mind. It's remarkable how the mind can quietly deceive us. I felt it so many times, the rosary in hand, the heart seeking peace, while persistent thoughts circled, convincing me I wasn't praying correctly. It's as if an invisible thief steals attention and plants guilt, suggesting every distraction is a spiritual failure. But the truth is different. Saint Faustina shows that an attentive heart matters more than an alert mind. She recorded moments when, even seemingly distracted, her prayers were heard and grace manifested. The distraction we feel is often just a surface layer. Beneath it, the soul continues to work, connecting with the divine, processing intentions, and receiving mercy. The mind deceives us because it wants to control, evaluate, and measure every moment of prayer. It creates a sense of failure and wasted time, while the spirit operates independently of mental analysis. Silent anxiety and the desire for perfection turn attention into constant vigilance, blocking true surrender. Sleeping, drifting, or losing focus does not stop the spiritual movement. it often continues more deeply than we realize. Recognizing this dynamic changes our relationship with prayer itself. What seemed like distraction is really internal reorganization. The heart remains connected, and the energy of prayer flows even when the mind believes it has failed. It is a reminder that faith does not depend on conscious attention, but on the pure intention that remains, even amidst restless thoughts. This awareness frees us from the quiet guilt that accompanies every distraction. The mind creates stories about what is right or wrong during prayer, but the spirit keeps acting. Every rosary bead, even traced with partial attention, is a channel of light, a thread connecting the soul to divine mercy. When we accept that distraction does not nullify prayer, a quiet peace emerges. The mind slows, the heart opens more easily, and the spirit finds space to work freely. What once seemed failure reveals itself as opportunity, the chance to let grace manifest invisibly yet tangibly, transforming our connection with God without conscious effort. Thus, we learn to trust the invisible process of prayer. Body, mind, and spirit need not be perfectly aligned for prayer to reach depth. What matters is an open heart, quiet persistence, and continuous surrender, even when we do not feel fully aware. The paradox of surrender, acting without noticing. There are moments when what we seek most, control, attention, conscious effort, pulls us away from what truly matters. I've felt this so many times during prayer, trying to do it right, watching every thought, measuring every word, believing that only conscious effort could secure God's presence. And beneath it all, a quiet tension gnawed at the heart. Saint Faustina showed us a different path. She realized that true surrender often happens without our awareness. When the body yielded to sleep or the mind wandered, her intentions remained active on a spiritual level, and grace manifested in invisible ways. It's a paradox that defies logic. The more we let go of control, the deeper the effects of prayer become. Unconscious surrender carries a strength that conscious effort cannot reach. Sleeping during the rosary, or losing ourselves in thought while praying, doesn't mean inaction. It means the energy of prayer shifts to places the mind cannot reach. It's like an underground current, invisible, silent, yet powerful, shaping what is yet to come without our awareness. Recognizing this paradox transforms the spiritual experience. We begin to trust that every planted intention, every whispered word, even without full attention, remains active. The soul works, mercy flows, and prayer reaches depths beyond physical effort. Understanding that we don't need to control every detail opens space for grace to act freely. It is in this silent movement that the heart finds peace. Every moment we believe we are inactive, the soul remains connected to the divine. Every rosary bead that slips through our fingers while we sleep is action, even if unseen, even if unnoticed. The paradox is that when we stop trying to do everything perfectly, we begin to act more powerfully than we imagined. Awareness of this paradox teaches humility and trust. Surrendering without realizing it is not weakness, but alignment with what God is already doing in us. Prayer then becomes less about effort and more about silent presence, acceptance, and openness. When we understand that acting without awareness can be as effective as conscious action, our relationship with prayer changes. Anxiety eases, the heart opens, and the energy of prayer flows freely, finding invisible paths. Unconscious surrender reveals itself as an instrument of silent transformation, showing that grace does not depend on control, but on openness of the spirit. The spiritual message of a tired body. The body speaks in subtle ways, often ignored by the mind. I've noticed this so many times. A quiet fatigue during prayer, heavy eyes, hands trembling slightly as the rosary slips through the fingers. The first reaction is guilt, as if tiredness were failure, as if devotion should be measured by physical energy. But the body has its own language, a message that must be understood. Saint Faustina understood deeply that the body is a vehicle, but not the sole author of prayer. She reported that even when exhausted or distracted, her intentions continued to reach the divine. A tired body is not an obstacle. It signals that something greater is happening, an invisible connection that transcends physical effort. The body's rest is often the bridge to deeper spiritual action. Ignoring this message creates internal resistance. The mind judges, the heart pressures itself, and the energy of prayer is blocked by unnecessary effort. Recognizing that a tired body is an ally, not an enemy, transforms the experience. It shows us that prayer does not rely solely on conscious effort but on the surrender of the whole self, mind, heart, and body working in harmony, even if in different ways. Sleep, relaxation, and physical fatigue allow the soul to operate on invisible levels. It's as if each cell releases space for grace to flow, reorganizing energy, dissolving tension, and adjusting inner vibrations. Perceived exhaustion does not diminish prayer. It signals that God's presence is finding subtle pathways, using the body's quiet receptivity. This message invites us to respect the body's natural rhythms. Prayer does not demand heroic effort. It requires intention and openness. When welcomed, a tired body does not block spiritual flow. It becomes a catalyst, creating space for invisible manifestations, subtle connections, and silent transformations that the mind could not force. Every moment of fatigue during prayer carries hidden potential. It reminds us that we need not force constant vigilance or judge each moment of rest. The body's surrender, together with the heart's pure intention, creates perfect harmony with divine mercy, allowing prayer to manifest in ways beyond conscious logic. When we understand the message of a tired body, the spiritual experience becomes lighter and deeper. We begin to see that every silent gesture, every involuntary pause, is an opportunity for grace to expand, working beyond what we can observe. Body, mind, and spirit find balance, and prayer transforms into a continuous flow of light and presence. The invisible transformation that happens while you sleep during prayer. We often believe that spiritual change depends on conscious effort, constant vigilance, and full attention. I felt this so many times. The sense that if my eyes closed, nothing would happen, that grace would be missed. But the truth is entirely different. Sleeping while praying the Rosary does not stop transformation. It continues silently, powerfully, invisible to both eyes and mind. Saint Faustina wrote about how God's mercy worked within her even when she was physically or mentally exhausted. She understood that the Spirit operates in dimensions beyond human control, and that pure intention creates effects that manifest even when we aren't aware. Every moment of sleep is, in reality, an opportunity for prayer to penetrate deeply into the heart, reorganizing energies, dissolving blockages, and opening subtle pathways of transformation. A rested body and a slowed mind allow the soul to act in ways conscious effort could never reach. It's as if each rosary bead, passed between drowsy fingers, releases a frequency of light that travels through invisible inner levels, touching areas of the self that need silent healing. What appears passive is, in truth, an active force, a spiritual alchemy happening beyond our awareness. When we accept this reality, prayer becomes less about effort and more about presence. Every moment of sleep, every wandering thought, every instance of fatigue reveals itself as part of a flow working in our favor. The invisible manifests in subtle answers, inner clarity, and a peace that does not depend on the mind but on the alignment of the spirit with God's mercy. The profound teaching of Saint Faustina on prayer in sleep. Along this journey, I have realized that prayer is not measured by the effort of the mind or the vigilance of the body. I have felt so much guilt for believing that falling asleep or becoming distracted meant failure. But Saint Faustina shows us that true spiritual depth does not depend on conscious perfection. It blooms in the quiet, continuous surrender of the heart. Sleeping while praying the Rosary is not a lack of faith. It is a testament to the divine working on invisible levels. The tired body is a partner to the soul. The distracted mind does not nullify intention. Every moment of sleep, every pause, every seemingly irrelevant distraction carries spiritual potential. The heart perceives what the mind cannot reach. It senses grace, absorbs mercy, and connects with God in ways that need not be controlled or understood. Silent, unconscious surrender is often more powerful than any conscious effort. Saint Faustina teaches us that prayer is a subtle dialogue that transcends words and gestures, crosses internal time and space, and manifests even when we are not aware. Divine mercy finds invisible paths, touches the heart, transforms, and reorganizes spiritual energy without our ability to measure or force it. Sleeping during prayer does not diminish the prayer. It expands attunement to God, showing that divine presence is always at work, even when the body rests. Understanding this frees us from silent guilt, from anxiety over perfection, and from the need to control every moment. We learn to trust in the power of pure intention, to value silence, and to recognize that every gesture, even unconscious, carries light and divine connection. It is in this space of silent surrender that prayer becomes powerful, profound, and transformative. And so, what once seemed distraction or failure reveals itself as opportunity. Every moment of fatigue, every involuntary pause, every dream while praying the Rosary is a manifestation of mercy. The body sleeps, the mind quiets, but the heart continues to feel, receive, and transform. Saint Faustina shows us that in silent surrender, prayer finds its truest and most eternal expression.